Hey everybody, we are back again for another 2021-2022 NHL season preview, and today we're going to be looking at a team that went to the Stanley Cup Finals on a magical run last year, the Montreal Canadiens. They've had quite a few changes this offseason, however, both in the additions and in the subtractions category. So it's definitely going to be an interesting year for Montreal, and I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch, and it's going to be really intriguing to see where they end up in the final standings this season. But before we get into it, I just ask you to please subscribe and hit that thumbs up. It helps out so much and is greatly appreciated. But let's get into it. And before we look forward, we've got to look back. And as you can see, Montreal in the regular season last year was a very average hockey team. They were a middle-of-the-road team in the regular season. They went 24, 21, and 11 on the year, had 59 points, and got the last playoff spot in the North Division, finishing fourth. They had a middle-of-the-road offense, scoring 2.82 goals per game. They had a very mediocre team defense in the regular season, giving up 2.95 goals against per game. They actually gave up more goals than they scored. Their power play was okay at 19.2%, and their penalty kill was okay at 78.5%. Neither spectacular numbers there. This team was just so middle of the road all regular season long. However, in the playoffs, it was a different story. They went on an absolutely magical Cinderella run in the postseason. A lot of that was fueled by Gerry Price and his absolutely outstanding goaltending in the playoffs. He didn't play all that great in the regular season, but man, did he turn it on come playoff time. And Montreal was able to go all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals after coming back from 3-1 down against Toronto and winning that series in 7. Then they absolutely destroyed the Winnipeg Jets. They were able to beat Vegas, and they went to the finals, just coming up a little bit short against the Tampa Bay Lightning. But it really was a Cinderella run for a team in the regular season that was, very average. So they're looking to build off that playoff run. They're looking to, build off the way that they played in the postseason as opposed to the way that they played in the regular season and carry some momentum into this new season. However, it's going to be a different looking Montreal Canadiens team this season. They have made multiple changes to their roster, both guys leaving and guys being added to the team. If we look at the subtraction side of things first, Phillip Danault, very important two-way center, is gone now as he left for the LA Kings in free agency. Tomas Tatar also left as a free agent, now with the New Jersey Devils. Jesperi Kotkaniemi, I think we all know what happened there with the whole drama with him and Carolina and the offer sheet, and Montreal deciding not to match the offer sheet for Kotkaniemi, and he is now a Hurricane. Forward Jordan Wheel was not re-signed. Eric Stahl, Corey Perry, a couple of veteran guys that were not brought back. Michael Frolik, you can add to that list. On the back end, depth defenseman John Merrill and Eric Gustafsson both left via free agency. So that is a little, some defense depth gone there. Third goaltender Charlie Lindgren is no longer there. And I add Shea Weber to the list, not because he's not under contract with the Canadiens anymore, but because he is not going to play this season. He's going to spend the entire year on LTIR with an injury, and there's a lot of talk that Weber may never play in the NHL again. So obviously a very sad end to, or if it is the end, a very sad end to what was a great NHL career for Shea Weber. Hopefully he's able to get back out there, but it is not looking good on the injury front for Weber, and he certainly has already been ruled out for this season. So he's going to be on LTIR and may be done for good with Montreal, unfortunately. And that is certainly a big loss for the Canadiens. That's their captain, one of their top defensemen, That's gonna hurt having Shea Weber gone like that, for sure for this team. But if we look over on the addition side of things, one of their biggest moves and probably their biggest free agent signing was defenseman David Savard coming in from the Tampa Bay Lightning, where he won the Cup last year. Obviously, Savard is not going to single-handedly replace Shea Weber. I mean, he's not a franchise defenseman, but he is going to help soften the blow of losing Weber a little bit, add another, top four guy to that back end, and just, try and keep things steady back there with the absence of Weber this season. So I really like the David Savard signing for the Canadiens. I think they needed a guy like that, and I do think he's going to have a very positive impact on the Canadiens' blue line. They traded for forward Christian Dvorak after they figured out that they were not going to match Jesperi Kotkaniemi's offer sheet from the Hurricanes. They went out and they traded for Dvorak because they needed another center. And he comes in now from Arizona. He scored a good amount of goals last year for the Coyotes, who were an offensively challenged team. It's going to be really interesting to see the kind of year that Dvorak has now with the Canadiens. He's on a much better team in Montreal than he was in Arizona. And I think he has a chance to have a 50-plus point season this year and really kind of show that he was the right guy to bring in with the leaving of Kotkaniemi. But they also added in Mike Hoffman from the St. Louis Blues in free agency. Now, he is starting the year injured. He could miss up to the first 4 weeks for the Canadiens, but we'll have to see how that goes along. But he's definitely going to be a boost to the power play, which they're certainly looking to get over 20% this year. And Hoffman is a big power play scorer. They also brought in depth forward Matthew Perreault from the Winnipeg Jets. He'll play a depth role on this team. Defenseman Chris Weidman comes in, another depth guy, kind of replacing the loss of Merrill and Gustafsson. Depth forward Cedric Paquette, and they picked up a new third goalie, Sam Montembeault, off waivers from the Florida Panthers, and he's going to be the third guy for Montreal. If anything happens to Price, who may not be healthy to start the season now, or Jake Allen, Montembeault can step in and be the third goaltender. So a lot of depth additions here, but obviously the big one, David Savard on the back end and Christian Dvorak up front. Moving on now to my projected roster for Montreal. Injuries are playing a role in with this team already. Obviously, we already talked about Shea Weber and him not being there on the back end. Also, Mike Hoffman looks like he's going to miss at least the start of the season. It's going to be a little bit at the start of the season. Hopefully just a week or two, but it could be up to the first 3 to 4 weeks for Hoffman, but he is still recovering from an injury. And Paul Byron is going to miss likely the first half of this year. He's definitely starting the year on LTIR. He had off-season surgery and will not be ready likely until around January. So he looks like he's out for the first half. So those are a couple forwards that are going to be missing from the Canadiens lineup to start at least. And we'll see how they work in later in the year. But as far as who is there, obviously Nick Suzuki, Cole Caulfield, the two young superstars, Tyler Toffoli, Brendan Gallagher, Jonathan Drouin back. Really good to see Jonathan Drouin back. A lot's come out during training camp about why he left last year and all of the mental health issues that he was going through, and it's really, really good to see him back and healthy and out there for the Canadiens, and love to see him have a big year this year. Josh Anderson, Christian Dvorak, Joel Armia, Arturi Lehkonen, Cedric Paquette. Now, Cedric Paquette does have a minor injury. He's not expected to play again in this preseason, but there is still a chance he could be there in the lineup for opening night. If not, he'll still be on the roster, I would imagine, as the extra forward because he's not going to be out too long. Matthew Perreault, Jake Evans, and I have Ryan Poehling making the team for right now. He's probably going to be there to start the year because Hoffman is out, but once Hoffman is ready to come back, I think Paling's probably a guy that's going to get sent down at that point to make room on the roster. But maybe they keep 14 forwards and they just bring Hoffman back and keep Paling on, and then maybe send down a defenseman. They could try and send Niku down, although he'd have to go through waivers, so he could just get claimed back by Winnipeg at that point. But we'll see what they decide to do there once Hoffman's ready to return, if they keep Paling on the NHL roster or if they send him to Laval. As far as the back end goes, I have them carrying 8 defensemen, but they could send Niku down. That's definitely a possibility, or waive Niku down and see if they can get him through waivers. But they've got, obviously, top 4, Jeff Petrie, Ben Sherratt, David Savard, and Joel Edmondson. Now, Joel Edmondson also has an injury, and his status for opening night is up in the air. And that's a big question mark as to whether he'll be ready to start the season or not. So injuries are definitely playing a role with this Canadiens team already. Alexander Romanov, Brett Kulak, and then the depth guys, Chris Weidman and Sami Niku. One of those guys will probably be in the lineup if Edmondson is not able to go at the start of the season. So we'll have to see how it all works out there on the back end. And in goal, obviously, you've got Carey Price and Jake Allen. And Carey Price was supposed to be ready to start the season, but now may not be. Dom Ducharme has said that he is not as confident now that Price is going to be there for opening night. But he did say that it likely, if he's not ready for the first game, it's likely not going to be too much longer beyond that before he is ready. So Price is definitely going to be back soon. It's just a matter of we don't know if he's going to play opening night or not. Jake Allen is obviously the other goaltender in this tandem. He actually had a pretty solid year last year, and he'll be the starter opening night if Price is not able to go. On the depth side of things, these are, players that make out the depth of this team. Obviously, Hoffman is going to be a regular in the lineup when he's healthy. He's just not healthy right now. But you can insert him into the starting lineup once he is. Paul Byron, like I said, is going to start the year on LTIR. He is out for the first half of the season. But when he does come back, he'll be a guy available to put in on the third or fourth line. They have Michael Pezzetta, who they just waived actually this morning, so we'll see if he actually clears waivers or not. If he does, obviously he's going to the AHL, but he'll be available for call-up. And Alex Belzile as well will be a guy that could get called up throughout the year if they happen to have some injuries up front. On the back end, they have Cody Goluboff in camp on a PTO. We don't know if he's going to be signed officially or not, but if he is, that would be some depth added to their defense. And Xavier Ouellet looks like a guy that could be called up if they happen to need a defenseman at some point this season. Obviously, I have them carrying 8, so they would need multiple guys out for them to need to call up a defenseman, but Ouellet's been around a long time now, and he would likely be the call-up. And then their third goaltender, Sam Montembeault, who they picked up on waivers from Florida. Obviously, there's already health questions with Carey Price at the start of the year, so if he can't start the season dressed, then it would be Allen and Montembeault in goal until Price was ready to return. But like I said, Dom Ducharme said that he doesn't expect Price to be out long-term. If he does miss the beginning of the season, it should only be a game or two, and then he'll be able to come back. So he'll be your organizational third goalie in Montreal for this season. And that's my projected roster, just a projection. There's not too many spots up for grabs, but what they're going to decide to do on the back end, I think, is one of the more interesting questions here. Do they carry 8 defensemen? Do they keep Niku? Or do they end up trying to slip him through waivers and send him down? And then there's a chance that, someone could claim him, or Winnipeg could claim him back, and where they originally got him from. But that could make things interesting on the back end. I think the Ryan Paling question gets interesting once Hoffman is healthy. I think right now they keep him on the roster, but once Hoffman is ready to return, then what do you do with Paling? Do you keep him as an extra forward, or do you send him down to Laval? That's going to be an interesting question there for the Canadiens. So while much of the lineup and roster is pretty well set, there are a couple of interesting questions for this team to still figure out. But Montreal, obviously injuries playing a big role in what's going on with this team, and who's healthy and who's not for opening night is going to have a huge impact on what their opening night lineup looks like. But when they're healthy, they should be a competitive team. And obviously, they didn't have a great regular season last year, but they turned it on in the playoffs and had a magical playoff run. However, we saw a pretty similar thing with the Dallas Stars in 2020, where they were a decent team, but they weren't great in the regular season. Then in the 2020 playoffs, they got hot. They went on this big run. They made it to the Stanley Cup Finals, and then didn't make the playoffs last year in 2021. So I don't think the Habs are a lock for the playoffs. I certainly think they're a playoff-capable team. But they're in a tough division, or at least a top-heavy division, with Boston, Tampa Bay, Toronto, Florida, Montreal. Those top 5 teams are all going to be fighting for playoff spots. And it's going to be interesting to see who makes it and who doesn't. So Montreal absolutely has a shot to be a playoff team this year. They're going to be right in the thick of the playoff race all season long. But I don't think they're a guarantee to get in. It's going to be a tough battle with a lot of other good teams in that Atlantic division. So it's going to be fun to see what the Canadiens are able to do. I think they have a good roster, certainly up front. Their defense, I think, is more like middle-of-the-road defense. But up front, they've got a good forward group that should be able to score goals. And obviously, a lot's riding on their goaltending. Carey Price played great in the playoffs last year, but he didn't have a great regular season. If he has another tough regular season, I think it's going to be hard for them to finish ahead of teams like Tampa and Boston and Toronto and Florida. Like they're going to need Carey Price to bring it this year, or they're going to need another goaltender, Jake Allen or Montembeault or somebody, to really step up and fill that void. But goaltending is definitely going to play a big role. Do we see the playoff Carey Price, or do we see regular season Carey Price? Because that could really impact whether this team's a playoff team or not. But Montreal is going to be a super interesting team again this year. I think they're going to be a lot of fun to watch. And can't wait to see how it all shakes out this season. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, links to our merch store, memberships, and donation links are down in the description below. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.